Okay, so let's take a look at what I have here. Off the side is BMJ, first published 10, 11, 36, 19th of January 2022. Downloaded on March 31st by guest, protected by copyright. Okay, so the title: COVID-19 vaccines and treatments. We must have raw data now. Data should be fully and immediately available for public scrutiny. I don't like saying data. It just sounds weird to me. I'm sorry, guys. I like saying data. I used to be a Trekkie back in the days. I'll still watch Star Trek right now. And Data's pretty cool. Um, he's kind of like a different form of Spock, but yeah. So get over how I say data. All right, I say data. Get over it, globetards. You're not my boss. You're not my boss. You're not my dad. Okay, so data should be fully and immediately available for public scrutiny. Peter Doshi, Fiona Godley, Cameron Abbasi. Okay, so let me take a drink of water real quick. So we're gonna get through this together, guys. We're gonna do this together, okay? Okay, here we go. In the pages of the BMJ a decade ago, in the middle of a different pandemic, it came to light that governments around the globus had spent billions stockpiling antivirals for influenza that had not been shown to reduce the risk of complications, hospital admissions, or death. The majority of trials that underpinned regulatory approval and government stockpiling of Tamiflu were sponsored by the manufacturer. Most were unpublished. Those that were published were ghostwritten by writers paid by the manufacturer. The people listed as principal authors lacked access to the raw data, and academics who requested access to the data for independent analysis were denied. The Tamiflu saga heralded a decade of unprecedented attention to the importance of sharing clinical trial data. Public battles for drug company data, transparency campaigns with thousands of signatures, strengthened journal data sharing requirements, explicit commitments from companies to share data, new data access website portals, and landmark transparency policies from medicine regulators all promised a new era of data transparency. No, get my slipper back on. I was stepping on the floor. It's kind of cold. Okay. So what we get there is that during the Tamiflu pandemic, no one got a chance to question anyone, and then I guess the corporations and the ones that were making the antivirals and stockpiling antivirals for influenza, blah 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 blah. There was no transparency. They could do whatever they wanted. No one got a chance to question them. And then that saga, or that time, the Tamiflu time, it heralded a decade of president attention. So what happened after that is that led people to say, hey, we should be able to question what's going on. So progress was made, but clearly not enough. The errors of the last pandemic are being repeated. Well, yeah. Memories are short. Today, despite the global rollout of COVID-19 vaccines and treatments, the anonymized participant level data underlying the trials for these new products remain inaccessible to doctors, researchers, and the public, and are likely to remain that way for years to come. This is morally indefensible for all trials, but especially for those involving major public health interventions. Unacceptable today. Pfizer's pivotal COVID vaccine trial was funded by the company and designed, run, analyzed, and authored by Pfizer employees. The company and the contract research organizations that carried out the trial hold all the data. and Pfizer has indicated that it will not begin entertaining requests for trial data until May 2025, 24 months after the primary study completion date, which is listed on on clinicaltrial.com as 15th of May 2023. The hell? 24 months. Wow, that's crazy. The lack of access to data is consistent across vaccine manufacturers. Moderna says data may be available with publication of the final study results in 2022. Datasets will be available upon request and subject to review once the trial is complete, which has estimated primary completion date of 27th October 2022. As of the 31st of December 2021, AstraZeneca may be ready to entertain requests for data from several of its large phase 3 trials, but actually obtaining data could be slow going. As its website explains, timeliness may vary per request and can take up to a year upon full submission of request. What's going on with these guys? These guys get to like, why look, if exactly like what you know how the government says, when it came to the National Defense Act and all that, you know what I mean, where they start if you're not doing something wrong, why are you worried? If they didn't do nothing wrong, then why don't they just give us the data? Show it to us. What are they scared of? Why are they hiding the data? So underlying data for COVID-19 therapeutics are similarly hard to find. Published reports of Regeneron's phase 3 trial of its monoclonal antibody therapy, REGEN-COV, flatly state the participant level data will not be made available to others. Should the drug be approved and not just for emergency authorized, sharing will be considered. For remdesivir, the U.S. National Institutes of Health, which funded the trial, or the NIH, created a new portal to share data, but the data set on offer is limited. An accompanying document explains the longitudinal data set only contains a small subset of the protocol and statistical analysis plan objectives. Okay, fuck scumbags. We are left with publications but no access to the underlying data on reasonable request. This is worrying for trial participants, researchers, clinicians, journal editors, policymakers, and the public. The journals that have published these primary studies may argue that they face an awkward dilemma caught between making the summary findings available quickly and upholding the best ethical values that support timely access to underlying data. In our view, there is no dilemma. The anonymized individual participant data from clinical trials must be made available for independent scrutiny. Why can't we see the data? Why won't they give us the data? What's the issue here, guys? Explain that. Explain that, globeheads. Everyone that's still wearing their mask, explain this. Journal editors, systematic reviewers, and the writers of clinical practice guidelines generally obtain little beyond a journal publication, but regulatory agencies receive far more granular data as part of the regulatory review process. In the words of the European Medicines Agency, former executive director and senior medical officer, relying solely on the publication of clinical trials in scientific journals as a basis of healthcare decisions is not a good idea. Drug regulators have been aware of this limitation for a long time and routinely obtain and assess the full documentation rather than just publications. Wow. Can you guys see what's going on here? Obviously, they're doing something wrong. Like, why are they hiding the data? Among regulators, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration is believed to receive the most raw data but does not proactively release them. What the fuck? After a Freedom of Information request to the agency for Pfizer's vaccine data, the FDA offered to release 500 pages a month, a process that would take decades to complete. arguing in court that publicly releasing data was slow owing to the need to first redact sensitive information. This month, however, a judge rejected the FDA's offer and ordered the data be released at a rate of 55,000 pages per month. Excuse me. The data organization's website are to be made available requesting the organization's website. And there's the website, you guys. https phmpt.org. Okay, so good, cool on the judge. He was like, man, shoot that information. What do you mean you're gonna give it to us at 5,000 within decades? In releasing thousands of pages of clinical trial documents, Health Canada and the EMA have also provided a degree of transparency that deserves acknowledgement. Until recently, however, the data remained of limited utility, with copious redactions aimed at protecting trial blinding. But study reports with fewer redactions have been available since September 2021, and missing appendices may be accessible through Freedom of Information requests. Why is it so much of a big hassle to have these idiots show us the data of what they did, what they didn't do, the blind tests, who's the blind mice, who wasn't the blind mice? What's the issue here? What's the issue here? I don't get it. Even so, anyone looking for participant level data sets may be disappointed because Health Canada and the EMA do not receive or analyze this data. And it remains to be seen how the FDA responds to the court order. What the hell? If the court ordered me to do something and I was like, no, that would lock my ass up. Moreover, the FDA is producing data only for Pfizer's vaccine. Other manufacturers' data cannot be requested until the vaccines are approved, which the Moderna and Johnson & Johnson vaccines are not. Industry which holds the raw data is not legally required to honor requests for access from independent researchers. Wow. This is like a lot. Okay, so like the FDA and unlike its Canadian and European counterparts, the UK regulator, the Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulator Agency does not proactively release clinical trial documents, and it has also become delayed in posting information released in response to Freedom of Information requests on its website. This is pretty bad, guys. Transparency and trust. There's that word trust again. Trust, believe, hope, have faith. Wow. As well as access to the underlying data, transparent decisions making is essential. Regulators and public health bodies could release details such as why vaccine trials were not designed to test efficacy against infection and spread of SARS-CoV-2. Had regulators insisted on this outcome, countries would have learned sooner about the effect of vaccines on transmission and been able to plan accordingly. Big Pharma is the least trusted industry. Hold on, guys. I need Sorry, my nose has been getting warm again, so sinuses. Hold on. I'm gonna do some Sinex. Okay. That Sinex opens my nose up real fast. So Big Pharma is the least trusted industry. Duh. Big Pharma. I'll tell you guys later. At least 3 of the many companies making COVID-19 vaccines have passed criminal and civil settlements costing them billions of dollars. One pleaded guilty to fraud. Other companies have no pre-COVID track record. Now the COVID pandemic has minted many new pharma billionaires, and vaccine manufacturers have reported tens of billions in revenue. Follow the money, guys. Follow the money. The BMJ supports vaccination policies based on sound evidence. As the global vaccine rollout continues, it cannot be justifiable or in the best interest of patients with the public that we are left to just trust in the system. When you trust in a system, that is called a belief system, guys. The public were left to just trust in the system with a distant hope that the underlying data may become available for independent scrutiny at some point in the future. The same applies to treatments for COVID-19. Transparency is the key to building trust and an important route to answering people's legitimate questions about the efficacy and safety of vaccines and treatments and the clinical and public health policies established for their use. 12 years ago, we called for the immediate release of raw data from clinical trials. We reiterate that call now. Data must be available when trial results are announced, published, or used to justify regulatory decisions. There is no place for wholesale exemptions from good practice during a pandemic. The public has paid for COVID-19 vaccines through vast public funding of research, and it is the public that takes on the balance of benefits and harms that accompany vaccination. Oh, I'm sorry, I probably covered the thing. So the public has paid for COVID-19 vaccines through vast public funding of research, and it is the public that takes on the balance of benefits and harms that accompany vaccination. See? Balance of benefits and harms that accompany vaccination. The public, therefore, has a right and entitlement to those data as well as the interrogation of those data by experts. Pharmaceutical companies are reaping vast profits without adequate independent scrutiny of their scientific claims. The purpose of regulators is not to dance to the tune of rich global corporations and enrich them further. It is to protect the health of their populations. We need complete data transparency for all studies. We need it in the public interest, and we need it now. So in the fine print, I'll read this one, but then I'll just show the list of references. So competing interests. We have read and understood BMJ policy on declaration of interest and declare that BMJ is a co-founder of All Trials campaign. Interesting. PD was one of the Cochrane and reviewers studying influenza antivirals beginning in 2009, who campaigned for access to data. He also helped organize a coalition advocating for adequately licensed medicines, CAALM or CALM, which formally petitioned the FDA to refrain from fully approving any COVID-19 vaccine this year. PD is also a member of Public Health and Medical Professions for Transparency, which has sued the FDA to obtain the Pfizer COVID-19 vaccine data. Cool, awesome. The views and opinions do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of the University of Maryland. Well, there it is, and there's the list. I'm going to go real slow so you guys can see it. Like the credits at the end of a bad movie. So there it is. We read a good article today. Again, it's BMJ London, UK. It was published on the 19th of January. It's COVID-19 vaccines and treatment. We must have raw data now. And from what we read together, and from what I myself interpreted and I myself um, have come to conclude, is that they're hiding something really bad. Like, and it's, I mean, it and the fact that they've paid out billions of dollars to keep everyone quiet. You know what I mean? And the fact that they're profiting so much. I mean, this is like back in the days they used to have this thing called the snake skin. Snake oil medicine man, or snake medicine man, snake juice medicine man, and these people, basically that's just a term, like back in the days before they regulated, medicine and whatnot. People would roll around in in carts, kind of like they sell the elotes, the corn, the Mexican corn, and kind of like they sell the ice cream, and literally, ice cream truck. Back in the days, people used to drive around and supposedly sell, you know, cure-alls and wonder drugs, and most of it was actually drugs. It had like cocaine and some type of heroin, or an opiate or something inside of it, and they would make tons of money. And they would drive around, um, setting up shops on certain towns on the corner, and calling people's attention, kind of like the circus would do. And it was a total joke. And they had to. A lot of people were dying, would get sick, and so they supposedly, in the interest of the public, or they shut them down, which is funny because now the main corporations that were working to shut down these independent people, or these independent drug dealers, got shut down, and these guys became big pharma, the ones that were shutting down these little independent, wonder all, cure all, drug dealing scumbags that were running around, in ice cream trucks and shit. selling selling that was not over the counter. It was literally like, oh, it was literally over the windows, over the window of the carriage that they were in. They were rolling around in a carriage, and they were like, you know, selling drugs. And so, yeah, back in the days, heroin was from what my dad told me, that, and those were large families back then. Excuse me. And my grandma raised about like 13 kids, not to mention, like the rest of the family, like that would come around. And so in the middle of the night, to keep my grandfather Simon was pretty hardcore, and to keep them quiet, and to keep Grandpa Simon from whipping everyone's ass, Grandma Jelita would grab some, she said it was medicine, or she would give it to them. Sometimes she would tell them it was fish oil and stuff. But truth be told, it was a tiny spoonful of opium. It was cough syrup, but it had some hardcore stuff in it. Imagine Robitussin, but like 100 times stronger. And that was normal back then. There was no doctor. The doctors didn't have. There was no such thing as large hospitals or anything like. Most of the time, the doctors were field service providers. They would go to your home. They would go to your residence, go to your business. They would go to wherever you're at, and they would serve. They were field service providers. So yeah, that's how all this turned. The corporations took advantage of the fact that they used, supposedly, in the name of public interest, or in the name of the health, or in the name of the people, that they stopped all those independent drug dealers. But then the outcome of that is the formation of big pharma. And so, and if you look up a pharmacology and all that, that actually, that comes from witchcraft and curanderos and medicine men, and 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 witches and stuff. All of that comes from back then. So what you're seeing right now, big pharma, everyone is so, brainwashed and indoctrinated to to this whole big pharma thing where popping pills is so easy. It's just and now you have like tons of kids just overdosing because they're raiding their parents' medicine cabinets and taking their you know uh, making heroin into a pill form is was one of the stupidest things I could. I mean I can't even. I could talk all day long about how a pill form of heroin is such a horrible idea, and I'm pretty sure it speaks for itself. So yeah, that's big pharma. Really, is they're. I could understand why they're the least trusted industry, because technically they're not really an industry. Technically, they're a cartel. They're drug dealing cartel. They're a corporation. They're drug. They decide who dies, who doesn't die. I mean, you guys, and they're hiding all the data. We see this. They're hiding all the data. We just went over this together. We read it, and so and we do know it's right here as a fact. They have paid out, billions of dollars to keep people quiet. So, all right, we'll end it up on there. We'll end it. Nice little article, and we'll look up more articles, and we'll continue reading. And do you even science, bro?